Why don't you tell people why this is so exciting for you?
Well, when I decided what I want to do with my life, I had just finished reading a novel called The Icarus Hunt. And after I closed the book, I went, I want to write books that people enjoy as much as I enjoyed this book. And then the author of that book just happens to be famous for his Star Wars novels.
Oh, does he?
Which Star Wars novels did this guy write? One of those obscure ones like Zorba the Hutt, Glove of Darth Vader, Galaxy of Fear?
Oh no, he happened to create the very first post-Return of the Jedi Star Wars book ever written, which many people would know as Heir to the Empire.
Wait a second. You're not talking about who I think you're talking about.
I am. Timothy Zahn.
Yes, so we're talking about Timothy Zahn, writer of Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, The Last Command, Spectre of the Past, Visions of the Future, Allegiance, Choices of One, Survivor's Quest, and recently, Scoundrels.
Scoundrels!
Who's excited for this?
I'm excited. I'm clapping my Dorito-stained hands together.
Hello?
Hello, is this Mr. Zahn?
Speaking.
Hey, this is Bombad Radio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be on.
Thank you for allowing us to ask you a few questions.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, first of all, Scoundrels just came out, so most of our listeners are also readers of Star Wars EU novels, and they've heard of Scoundrels. Not all of them have bought it yet. Christmas just happened, so they'll be buying it soon. Mm-hmm. So what can you tell us about the stories contained in Scoundrels of Han and Chewie and Lando? And can you elaborate on any other characters we'll be seeing in the new book of Stars Returning and new faces?
Basically, the tagline for this book is Star Wars meets Ocean's 11. Han is hired to do a heist to break into a Black Sun Sector Chief's impregnable vault. He is obviously a smuggler, not a vault breaker or whatever, but he knows people. So he hires or grabs a group of fellow scoundrels to join him in this endeavor. Lando shows up, not entirely to Han's satisfaction, and we go on from there. The only other familiar faces besides Han, Chewie, and Lando are Winter, who I invented or created in the Thrawn trilogy, and Kel Tainer, who was one of Aaron Alston's race squadron, or who will be in the timeline a race squadron member. But those who have not been reading any of the other expanded universe books will have no problems getting into this one. It's a great one to start with if you always wanted to read a Star Wars book, but are intimidated by the 150 plus books that are already out there. So aside from those, everybody else is a new character. You can hit the book running, and hopefully we'll enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, as you've noticed, that's Jeremiah. I am James, the co-host. A pleasure to meet you, Mr. Zahn. Very excited. So, let me ask you this. After writing the successful Thrawn novels, which were awesome, by the way, did you find that writing Scoundrels to be more difficult, or was it more like a breath of fresh air?
It is definitely different. There are no galactic threats on the horizon. There's no massive space battles. It's more of it's a smaller, definitely more self-contained book. I've always liked mystery, heist, puzzle box types of stories. And this was a chance to do one in the Star Wars universe, to create what looks like an unbreakable, impregnable vault, and then figure out a way that the guys in the Star Wars universe, guys and gals, can break into it. So there's a certain element of, con artistry, all of the Sting, a lot of careful planning and manipulation, like as in Ocean's 11. And as in both of those movies, I wanted my crew to be people who were going to be fun to read about and who were professionals who weren't looking for a way to stab each other in the back. A lot of heist books and movies are like that. Fairly despicable, disreputable people, and you're never sure who's going to be betrayed and murdered in their sleep or whatever. This is one of those, as they say, like Ocean's 11 or The Sting, where you can relax and just enjoy the ride.
Ah, okay, cool. Actually, this sounds more interesting the more I hear about it. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to purchase the book yet. You know how it is at Christmas when you have kids. But
Oh, yeah.
but for those of us that haven't had a chance to read the novel yet, must ask, does this novel feature the Millennium Falcon? And if so, does it elaborate on any of Han's famous tweaks to the ship?
It does have the Falcon in it. There are a couple of nice scenes with the Falcon, and one fairly important plot point revolves around it, and I think that's all I need to say.
Ooh, I like this. Can't help it. Millennium Falcon makes me go crazy. So let me ask you this then. Where did you draw the inspiration from when writing this book? Or any of your books for that much, for that matter? Like, is it mainly the films? Are there other sources? Was it kind of like the same process with the other books, or was it something a little bit different?
It basically boils down to the films, and Star Wars is great to write in because it is such a vast universe. You've got little dark corners all over the place where you can set a story. You've got lots of possibilities, lots of aliens, cultures. You can invent your own, as I did here. Their planets and their whatever, the cultures and such. It's always fun to just, okay, what kind of story would fit into the Star Wars universe? What kind of trouble and problems could the classic characters and some newcomers come up against? So it's the inspiration is all there. You just watch the movies again, start thinking in terms of hyperdrive and lightsabers and blasters and the Millennium Falcon, and before you know it, you've got a story idea.
So one of the things that I've been rereading Choices of One recently, and before that Allegiance, and those of course were written in the early, right after Yavin and so on time. So the reason in those books you got to write Han Solo as a much younger, more roguish Han Solo. Is that part of the influence for Scoundrels? Did you like in writing him so much in that period that you wanted to write him even earlier when he was still very much a rogue, a smuggler, scoundrel, rather than later where he's a family guy?
Yeah, I like that era. Han is interesting. He's very complex. His story arc, his character arc, is probably the strongest in the classic movies. Goes from me first scoundrel to fighting for a cause that's bigger than he is. So he's always an interesting person to deal with. Actually, the original idea I had for what became Scoundrels was to have it post Return of the Jedi, probably post Thrawn trilogy, and have a much more stellar cast with a couple of Jedi in it and all of that. And while I was trying to figure out how I could actually make a problem that 3 Jedi plus Han plus Wedge couldn't solve, had a discussion with Shelley Shapiro and Sue Rostoni, who was the Lucasfilm liaison at that point, and we were discussing the idea that we're looking for a book that non-Star Wars readers, Star Wars fans, but non-readers could start with. And at that point, the obvious thing to do was drop it, the setting right to after the Battle of Yavin. In fact, within a week or two of Yavin. And populate the book with only movie characters and newcomers so that nobody would have to know who Mara Jade was. No one would have to know who Corran Horn is. They could just jump in. They know Han, Chewie, and Lando. The rest are new characters, and we can just go with it that way. And it made for a much more interesting problem too. No Jedi around, no fancy tricks. Let's say simple tricks and nonsense, I believe is how Han put it. And it made it more difficult to have these guys do the heist, which of course makes it more fun and more challenging and more enjoyable for the reader to watch the fun and games.
With you describing it that way, it reminds me a lot of the Brian Daley Han Solo novels, some of the original EU novels where he wasn't allowed to use the Force, he wasn't allowed to use Darth Vader and Jedi and so on. Mm-hmm. And so, you got to write in that universe. And I know at Celebration 6, that book was definitely a big hit. The posters of it and shirts of it were everywhere. And people were basically drooling for it.
Well, I'm hoping they're enjoying it.
Well, now we're going to do a slight shift to some more general writing questions for you.
Okay.
Next one I have is, you have a master's degree in physics, as I recall.
Yeah.
What got you to want to write when you have physics is a pretty big and profitable degree? What got you to want to write novels when you have a physics background? What was your inspiration originally to want to write?
A very bad TV show. I finished watching a show back in 1975, turned off the TV, and said I could write better than that. So I sat down over the next couple of weeks in my spare time. I wrote a story, which was not anywhere near as good, not to mention better than the TV show. But it showed me that I was enjoying that writing was a lot of fun. So worked on that as a hobby for a couple of years. Sold my first story in December of '78. In July, I sold my second story. July of '79, sold my second story the day after my thesis advisor, died of a heart attack. So worked on a new project for a semester. I was going for a PhD the whole time. Worked on a new project, discovered I couldn't start a new physics project and write at the same time. I just didn't have the emotional energy for it. And decided that let's give this writing thing a try. So I set a goal of a certain amount of money in my first year, 1980. I wrote full time. So far, things seem to be going pretty well.
That's the understatement of the year. I'd say pretty well might be a very, very conservative way of putting that.
I've been very fortunate. I have never had a job or anything else in my life that I've enjoyed as much as writing. And I'm very grateful that I'm able to make a living at it.
And we're very grateful that you're able to write. So for our next three questions, they're actually going to be asked by a friend of the show. He's actually a very big fan of yours, and we're basically making his day and maybe his entire year already by allowing him to be on the show to ask you a few questions. So the next few questions are going to be asked by John. He is a really big fan of yours, and he's been thinking of these for a while. So John, take it away.
Thank you for doing all the fanboying for me there, Jeremiah.
Hi, John.
Hello. Well, to start out, when you're coming up with characters, not just Star Wars, but really looking at the Star Wars characters, what do you draw inspiration for? How do you create characters that are so endearing to the reader and fit so well into the Star Wars canon?
Characters for me start out with what they're going to do in the story. So if I'm going to have, for example, let's have a character who will be a foil for Luke. Okay, we'll call her Mara Jade. Now, what kind of a character is she going to be? Well, she's going to have this ability and that kind of personality. And as the story develops, the characters flesh out. And, okay, we're going to need some conflict. We're going to need the two of them to work together. Okay, that means she has to dislike Luke. Why? Okay, let's work out a backstory. And yet she needs to cooperate with Luke. Why? Because she's loyal to her boss, Talon Card, and he obviously wants this to be done. So if the story details work out, the personalities, characters, core beliefs, strengths and weaknesses also get fleshed out in the characters. So it's kind of and sometimes a character's ability or something will influence the direction the story goes. Okay, if I've got this part of a backstory, well, this is cool. Let's see, how will that affect the story I'm going to tell? Okay, that'll affect it in this direction. So it's in many ways a bootstrapping type of thing. I work out the story and the characters at the same time. And by the time I start writing the actual book, I basically understand the characters and I've got the overall details of the story.
Okay, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I try and approach it the same way, though perhaps not to as great effect. Looking
It's a
at
learning
your
skill.
looking at your books, a lot of them have non-human characters. You manage to make aliens that feel unique, think and act differently than humans, and yet still are relatable enough for the reader to understand what the aliens want. What process do you go through with coming up with such interesting aliens, and does Scoundrels have any new aliens or well-known aliens from the Star Wars canon?
Aliens are, as you say, the trick is to make them different and yet relatable enough that the readers can understand them. It's largely the same as any other character I come up with. It's if I have this alien species, I think probably the most well developed were the Zhirj in the Conquerors trilogy. The question is, okay, how are they different from humans? How is this going to affect their thinking, their culture, their society, how they see us, how we deal with them, etc. So it's largely the same process as with any character, except I need to then think through what are their differences and what will this mean for all relationships as well as the story. As to Scoundrels, we have obviously Chewbacca, and we have Zerba, who is, do you remember the guy at the bar near the beginning of Attack of the Clones who offers Obi-Wan a death stick? That's that species. Sleight of hand guy, pickpockets, that sort of person. Aside from that, we've got some Black Sun guy, what was she? Or I'm drawing a blank on his.
A Celine, I believe.
I'm sorry.
A Celine.
Celine, yes, thank you. You have to understand that I'm a book and several stories past when I wrote the book, so I sometimes you people who read it now sometimes know more about it than I remember. But yes, Feline, a couple of Feline in the Scoundrels as well. They're the bad guys, of course.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and the Conquerors trilogy was, I really did enjoy how the aliens were handled, the second book being entirely from the alien point of view.
Yeah, that was how we set up to do that, and it was an interesting take, and it was an interesting challenge for me, because again, you have to give the reader enough connection with the aliens that they understand them and sympathize, and yet make the culture realistically not human. So it's a balancing act, but because it's a challenge, it's fun to do.
Excellent. Now, moving past Scoundrels, you already written the related novellas Win or Lose All and Heist, and you recently announced working together with David Weber in the Honor Harrington series. A while back, there was a Facebook Q&A, and you mentioned that you were potentially interested in writing more books about the Chiss species as a whole, or perhaps more for the interplay between Nuso Esva, if I'm pronouncing that right, and Thrawn. Have you given those ideas any more thought with your current workload?
Well, I've got the other in the Heir to the Empire 20th anniversary edition. There is a novella with Thrawn and Nuso Esva. That's the only other thing I've done. Right now, I think everything is kind of on hold while we wait to see what Disney is going to do with the expanded universe novels. Del Rey's got a contract, their current contract with Lucasfilm for however long it runs, 2014, 2015, I'm not sure where that ends. But at that point, Disney will be able to say, whether they want more Star Wars books or not, or whether they want to hold off till the new movies come out, or whatever they want to do. So I am not scheduled to do anything more Star Wars at this point, and I'm not sure I could get a contract from Del Rey even if they wanted to, because, again, the future is always in motion, as Yoda said. So I've got, probably between the Chiss things and other ideas, I could probably do 20 more Star Wars novels. But that's obviously a little bit unrealistic. Chiss are definitely up there on the list. I would love to write the story of Anakin's first meeting with Thrawn. I pitched that to Dave Filoni for Clone Wars at last year at Celebration, so we'll see if anything ever comes of that. But at the moment, I'm done with Star Wars until someone says otherwise.
Well, hopefully someone says otherwise.
I'm quite sure.
I'm game. I'm game.
Yes, I'm all for the otherwise.
And if Thrawn and Chiss showed up in Clone Wars, that would be amazing.
That would be freaking awesome.
It would be fun. I've got a scenario. When I talked to Dave, he said that a lot of the storylines were coming from George himself, and so there wasn't an awful lot of room to add in things new. But he knows I'm interested. He's aware of my stuff. So sit back and wait and see if anything comes of it.
We'll see. I hope it does. Definitely hope it does, because I can't get enough Chiss or Thrawn.
I find it very amusing and gratifying that they showed up in the Old Republic game. That's cool. They've taken the Chiss and put them into a game. In fact, you can play them.
Yeah,
cool
that was a very exciting moment when they announced that for Tor.
So we have two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is, many of our listeners belong to a Star Wars writing community. We write Star Wars role plays and so on. So what advice would you give to people who want to write Star Wars and make it as Star Wars in feeling as possible?
Boy, that's a question. I mean, the trick is always to capture the feel of the universe, whether you're writing Star Wars, Star Trek, Terminator, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. All of these universes have a sense about them, and that's what you need to try to capture. How you do that, I don't really know. I mean, it's largely a subconscious thing of just, it feels right when I write it. I don't know if I could do some other franchises, but Star Wars I happen to have a knack for. But I would say if look at the movies, watch the movies, look at how the characters interact with each other, look at the overall framing of the universe, how the politics and all that work, and you try to capture the sense that is Star Wars. That's not a very good answer, but that's about all I can suggest.
Well, coming from you, it's a very good answer. So we have one last question. Every guest we have on the show, we give them the soapbox. So in the soapbox, they can promote any special causes they are currently involved with, future books they are writing, anything, or convention appearances, or anything like that. So we'd like to give you the soapbox now to be able to promote anything you'd like to promote. This is your opportunity to tell the fans whatever you'd like and to plug whatever you want to plug.
Oh, plugging. Well, most of you probably know I have a Facebook page. That's my contact sort of online presence. I don't actually have a website, but Facebook is probably as efficient or more so in getting the word out. So that's the place to go to find out what's going on, where my convention appearances are going to be and such. I guess the other thing, we already mentioned this, is the Honor Harrington Universe trilogy I'm working on with David Weber. I'm very excited about that. That's the next big project going on. Got a few other projects going on, working with a guy who's doing graphic novels, doing short story connections to those novels. But all this will get mentioned as is appropriate and as the timing is right. On my Facebook page. You can also, post as well as send me private messages. So that's about it. I'm just mostly keeping busy and trying to catch up after the holidays with my writing schedule.
Well, we'd like to thank you very much for being on the show with us. I know you've just made all of our days, especially John. Do you have anything you want to say to him just before we let him go, John?
No, just thank you for giving us this opportunity to interview you and learn more about what's to come.
John's in shock.
Oh,
You can tell he's in shock.
Well,
he doesn't know what
no
to do
problem.
with himself.
Thanks for having me on. Oh, and by the way, I do have the kind of a West Coast signing tour starting next Wednesday. So don't know exactly when this is going to air, but
It'll be airing tonight.
Tonight, okay. The details are again on Facebook, or I think Star Wars Books also lists them. I'm hitting Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, and Phoenix.
Okay. So any fans that are on by those cities or within driving distance, we'll send them your way
Well, I hope they will show up.
in droves.
All of you will go.
Thank you for being on the show, sir. This has been an honor, a pleasure, and we're glad we're finally able to talk to you.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.